Mercy, if justice is getting what you deserve, mercy is not getting what you deserve. And then there's grace, which blows my mind. Because if justice is getting what you deserve, and mercy is not getting what you deserve, when God offers us His grace, when He gives us His grace, He actually is giving us something that we don't deserve on top of the mercy, which is not getting what we do deserve. You see, the wages of sin is death. Therefore, that's the justice would be, hey, I sinned, I deserve death. That's what I've earned. But I begged for the master's forgiveness, and so His mercy came and He said, you are forgiven of your debt. You no longer are earning the wages of your sin, which is death. But He didn't stop there. He went on with His grace. For it is grace. Hold on a second. We are saved by His grace. Right? So His grace comes and gives us eternal life, which we didn't deserve. Now that we understand the definitions that we're working with here, we have experienced the mercy of God. Father has poured out His mercy on us. And He's telling us through this story that we're to have that same mercy with one another. Folks, the issue of forgiveness is tough. Every time I counsel with people that are struggling with forgiveness, they don't want to do it. They struggle with doing it because of the justice factor. When somebody has hurt us, we want justice to be done to them. Make it very clear that this story is making something very clear to us. If a brother asks for our forgiveness, we have to give it. We do not have a choice. And if you don't give it, I'm telling you, you're in trouble. It tells you that in the story. And look at the very last verse. Look what happens to the unmerciful servant. And Jesus says, this will happen to you if you don't forgive your brother from your heart. So, let's just make that very clear. If somebody comes and asks for your forgiveness, you better give it. Better give it fully. Because we're commanded to. But what about the circumstance when somebody doesn't come and ask for forgiveness? Maybe they don't know that they offended you. Maybe time has gone by so long that they've passed on. And they never will have the chance to ask for forgiveness. What then? Commanded. I want you to know that the commandment is not the same necessarily. Okay? We're not necessarily commanded to forgive, or we won't be forgiven if somebody doesn't ask us. But here's what happens. Somebody hurts us. As time goes on, that hurt turns into anger. That anger turns into hatred. That hatred turns into bitterness. And that bitterness turns into resentment. And believe me, by the time it gets to hatred, you're in sin. Jesus made it very clear in Matthew chapter 5. If you hold hatred in your heart towards your brother, you're guilty of what? You're guilty of murder. I'm pretty sure murder is a sin. Nobody laughed. Okay. Got real serious real fast. You see, so here's the difference. If somebody asks us for forgiveness and we don't forgive, we are immediately in sin. We have sin. If they never do ask us, understand that there will be a progression inside of you that this hurt will turn eventually into a sin issue for you, hindering your relationship with the Lord. So really, you're urged to forgive anyways. It's critical that you forgive regardless of if they ever come to you or not. But in the midst of these two questions, who is the greatest? And then how many times do I have to forgive? Because, hey, when somebody offends us, we still operate in this vertical mindset. And, well, because they are an offender, they're less than me. So I'm better than them. Therefore, I'm able to judge them. That's why I'm holding on to this, that I'm harboring this unforgiveness towards them. And so we still separate ourselves out that way. This is our human tendency. In the midst of these two questions, right in the middle is this explanation of how to walk through the steps of reconciliation. Right in the middle of these two questions, an explanation of who's the greatest and an explanation of how we're to forgive or why we're to forgive. Right in the middle of this is this explanation of how we are to walk into reconciliation with one another. Shrouded in mercy. The point of it, the end result, the goal, mercy. Winning your brother over. Here's what he says. Verse 15. If your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault, just between the two of you. Mano y mano, or wumano and wumano, however you say that with women. Okay. You go to that person one-on-one. Church, we fail at this. Time and time again. Our tendency is to go hang out with our friends and talk about it. Breach. Right there. Principle is violated. He's saying go to that person first. Why? How many times have we said it? I'm making up this percentage, okay? Making it up. But I'm convinced that 98% of church conflicts is misunderstanding or miscommunication. People that love the Lord don't intentionally hurt other people. You are to go to that person first, because you've got to give that person the chance to go, wow, that's not what I did not mean to hurt you. I did not mean to say it that way. I really didn't intend that. Please forgive me. And it's done. You've won your brother over. Gossip is left out, which is a sin, by the way. And the end result of gossip is people are brought into the story that have no business being a part of it. And then they take on the hurt. They take on the pain. They take on the confusion. And suddenly, you've got a heap of mess. One-on-one. If he listens to you, you've won your brother over. Verse 16. But if he will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of two or three witnesses. Doesn't mean that you're bringing your party or those that you've been gossiping with to the meeting, but trusted outside people that will be good, godly people that will help both sides listen to one another. Again, the goal is the same, to win your brother over, reconciliation. If he refuses at that point to listen, then you take it to the church leadership. And the goal is still the same, winning the brother over. If at that point there is still refusal, then you treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector. You treat them as an unbeliever. At that point, they are an unbeliever. And here's what's interesting. He adds these words, which are so strong. He says, "I tell you the truth." When he says that, he's going, I mean this. I really mean this. If you get to the place where you have to treat them as an unbeliever, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Now, that's heavy, okay? And I honestly, I'm not pretending to fully understand if that means that person has lost their salvation at that point. I'm not ready to fully buy into that. But let me tell you, if that phrase ended at that point, you would have to think that. But it doesn't end there. Because he goes on to say, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. The mercy factor is still in place. The goal is still to win your brother over. If you have to go so far that you are treating that person as an unbeliever and you're binding that on earth, which means it's going to be bound in heaven, that means that on some level, that person is going to be walking with a spiritual breach between him and the Lord. And the goal is to win the brother over. So you got to believe that he's like, oh wow, this has gotten so bad that it's affecting my relationship with God now. I got to get right with my brother. Winning them over. So therefore, when it gets to that level and they come back and they fall on their knees and they beg for forgiveness, whatever you loose on earth at that point will be loosed in heaven. And he even goes on to say, again, I tell you, if two of you on earth agree about this, what you ask for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 come together in my name, there I am with them. Folks, Jesus is serious about this. And he's serious about this because he's trying to transform our way of seeing each other, moving us from this vertical thing to this horizontal thing where we realize that his love for you is the same as his love for me. And his love for me is the same as his love for the kids that are down in the basement. And his love for the kids down in the basement is the same as the love for the lost one out there wandering around. He doesn't love me more or me less than you. But when it comes to being offended, that becomes really hard to take in. Because if somebody has offended me, I want him to love that person less. Man, that sounds bad to say. But let's be honest. We want justice. The mercy of God is all over this chapter, moving us from this to this. And giving us clear instruction on how to remain here. Hurt's going to happen. Okay? People will offend you. But now we are empowered to walk in truth. And we are empowered to do the right thing and do it God's way inside of righteousness for the purpose of winning them over. I mean, that's amazing. Think about the journey of a person who is... Think about the worst kind of violation that could happen to a person. And how God could come in and redeem that and heal that and help that person to walk through such a healing process that they get to the point where they forgive that violator. So much so that their heart would be turned towards winning them over. Nothing short of miraculous. So in view of God's mercy, we are to offer our bodies as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable to Him. This is our spiritual act of worship. Conforming no longer to the patterns of the world, but being transformed by the renewing of our minds. Then we can test and approve the good and pleasing and perfect will of God. He has been merciful to us. Let us be merciful to one another.